Americans for Fair Taxation presents the weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, March 18th, 2022. Good news, tax evaders. The IRS can't keep up with you. That's the name of an article by Jay Starkman, a CPA, that appeared in the Wall Street Journal on February 15th, 2022. Mr. Starkman points out that the Internal Revenue Service is the motor that keeps America's government running, and it's sputtering. Its computer systems are more than 50 years old. Phone calls go unanswered, and correspondence takes almost a year to process. National taxpayer advocate Aaron Collins told Congress that as of May 2021, the IRS had a backlog of more than 35 million tax returns requiring manual processing, including returns that were filed electronically, and they also have nearly 5 million pieces of unprocessed paper correspondence. The IRS core tax processing systems were created in the 1960s, and it is antiquated. Ms. Collins told Congress that the agency recently advertised 5,000 openings for return processors and other jobs, but it's filled only 179 of those 5,000 openings. Ms. Collins also said that out of 150 million calls last tax season, just 7% were answered, and only 3% of the 85 million callers seeking help with their individual tax forms actually reached a representative. A May 2021 report from the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration found that 42% of printers and copiers at 3 IRS tax processing centers last March were unusable or broken. Because the IRS lacks scanning technology, staffers have to type in data for many paper returns, and he notes that the IRS is on the verge of collapse. Now let's look at what this article isn't telling us. Like many commentators on the IRS, Mr. Skillman doesn't ask the key question. Why do we keep propping up a system that has clearly failed when we can get rid of the income tax and do away with the IRS altogether? If Mr. Skillman was dealing with an automobile engine that had as many serious problems as the IRS has, it's a virtual certainty he would conclude that the best course of action would be to either buy a new engine or replace the entire car. Repairing the broken engine makes sense only if there's no way to replace it and if there's a reasonable chance that the repairs would work. Now, this should be the same analysis that Congress makes in deciding whether or not to spend the money trying to fix the IRS. The first question is simple. Do we need the IRS in order to fund the government? The answer is even simpler. No. As long as there's a viable alternative, the government doesn't need the IRS. And we do have a much better alternative to the federal income tax, the fair tax. Now, the fair tax is not an abstract concept. It's actual legislation, H.R. 25, and it would be really simple for Speaker Pelosi to send it to the House Ways and Means Committee for hearings. The second question, can the IRS be fixed and become an effective force against evasion without becoming even more tyrannical and intrusive on our privacy and our rights? The answer to that one's also simple. No, not if you want to retain any of our constitutional safeguards. Now, if the answers are this simple, why doesn't Congress immediately start work on replacing the income payroll tax system with a fair tax? Well, that answer is obvious. The D.C. elites, their minions in Congress, and their lapdog media are all desperate to keep the income payroll tax in place because they benefit from it. In conclusion, to people who live in the real world, we have plenty of problems to deal with. If we see that something we don't need is broken, we just throw it out and move on. For example, most of us have been replacing our incandescent light bulbs with LED bulbs, which cost about the same but last 10 times longer. It would not only be more expensive to keep purchasing incandescent bulbs, it would also increase our utility costs. Now, when we hear people from the think tanks and the media wax eloquently about how the IRS needs to be fixed and how much it will cost and on and on and on, we should recognize that these people are really telling us not to purchase LED lights, but to continue buying incandescent lights, even though they're not as good and they cost much more in the long run. The incandescent lights, i.e. the IRS, will never be as effective or save money like the LED lights, the fair tax. But it's even worse. If we didn't need to purchase any light bulbs at all, then we wouldn't. The truth is that every dollar spent on modernizing the IRS is a wasted dollar because it will never allow the IRS to really slow the escalating income payroll tax evasion. However, the worst reason for investing more money in the IRS is that the income payroll tax is no longer needed. If we eliminate the income payroll tax system, we don't need the IRS. Now, to the rest of us, if we can eliminate an expense and actually get a better system, it is, as my grandson says, a no-brainer. Alexis de Tocqueville, the 19th century French historian, wrote about what he observed in America. He said, "The greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults." The income payroll tax system is broken and no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it. Join us and take back control of our country, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really wanted to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. And we'll know how much tax we're paying because taxes will no longer be hidden from us. They'll be clearly shown on every retail receipt. If you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to fairtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.